What's up, everybody? Hopefully you guys are doing good as always. Today, this video is going to show one of Magnus Carlsen's biggest blunders ever, possibly the biggest blunder ever. It was a game against Beriev in 2005. Let's go ahead and take a look. Magnus Carlsen has the white pieces, and we start with e4. We have the Carl defense, the advanced variation, bishop to f5, knight to c3. A lot of times in this position, we instead see knight to d2. In fact, Magnus Carlsen himself played this a couple of times. The point of knight to d2 is to try to get the knight maybe to a more useful square, because on c3, it's just going to be looking at a pyramid of pawns where it can't really attack. So a lot of times, it might be more efficient and might be better to, move a couple of times with the knight, but get the knight to a better square. Regardless, we see knight to c3, and now e6. We now have a very quick and powerful attack on the king side with g4, just grabbing a ton of space. It's these two pawns here alone, they're grabbing a lot of space for black, or for white, I guess, but the problem is they're just two pawns. It's going to be pretty easy to undermine them later on with moves like c5, or maybe f6. So you're trying to support these two pawns by also maybe getting some other pawns as well up into black's territory. And in general, I mean, you're just grabbing immediate space, making the bishop have to go back. And now we have knight to e2. We do have c5, again, trying to undermine this pawn, trying to maybe take away this pawn chain here. But here we have h4. So again, white is trying to grab space, while black is trying to take away white space that they have in the center. So already from the first 7 moves, we see both players trying to fight for space, which is a very key element in chess. We have h5, obviously trying to stop the bishop from getting trapped here. So h5, we now have knight to f4, the bishop moves back, and you win a pawn. Now you might be thinking, well, wait a minute, why can't you just take this pawn here? Well, the problem is after knight takes, pawn takes, and queen takes, these two pawns are stacked. And when pawns are stacked like these, it means that they can't defend each other. If they were side by side, one of them could defend the other one, and therefore they're a lot more safe. But now that they're stacked, they're forever going to be targets. You can get your bishops to attack as well, your rooks to attack, maybe your other bishops sometimes. So the point is, these two pawns, you're going to lose at least one of them. And in general, you don't want the structure here as black, which is why black instead decides to just give away a pawn, and instead keep this pawn chain here, or this pawn position and formation that's a little bit stronger. Here we have pawn takes on d4, and now knight to b5. Notice that you don't necessarily want to take with the queen, because then you allow knight to c6 developing with tempo. Instead, knight to b5, once knight to c6 comes, you can take, and after takes, your queen does come here, but there's no knight that can develop and hit the queen at the same time. So it's a lot stronger to take out your queen when this knight has already been traded out. So in this position, we don't see this. Instead, after the knight takes, we simply have knight g to e7. Now we have c3, and now knight takes on e5, and bishop to b5 check. The knight comes back to defend, and bishop to g5. Both bishops just carrying out possible attacks here on both sides. Both knights actually pinned to the queen or the king. So it's a great position here for white to just continue to attack. We have a6 trying to limit white's attacking possibilities, but now take, and queen to e2. We have black castles, now rook to h3, bishop to g6, knight to f4, and now e5. And here is a great spot to kind of stop and assess the tactical possibilities. Notice that when the rook came to h3, it does actually make a possible a possible fork rather, on this f4 square. So if the knight manages to come to f4, there is obviously this fork here. So that is one thing that black might be looking. Of course, there is also this immediate fork, but white is actually not losing any material because of this beautiful line. White takes on g6, now the knight takes back, and now you lose the exchange, but then you win it immediately back with this beautiful fork. So no real, major material loss, but this all comes down to calculation, making sure that your calculations are correct and that you're not actually losing material. So a lot of tactics here in this middle game position, but in the end of the day, no major material loss, like I mentioned. Queen to g3, we have g6, and now the knight coming to e3, the knight takes, and now the knight takes on d5. Here we have the bishop moving to c5, defending the knight, and now knight to b6 check. The point is, after bishop takes, you can take the queen. And there's no great way to stop this. Obviously, right now, this is a fork. So if you don't take the knight, you're going to lose the queen regardless. When you actually look at this, there are two minor pieces and a rook for a queen. So although this might seem like, black is in a horrible position, when you actually look at it, white has an advantage, but it's not that big of an advantage here. So white, Magnus Carlsen, in other words, still has a lot to prove. We have queen to f3, the king moves, and now the pawn is taken on f7. We have rook to d8. So far, there's no been blunder. I know you all are waiting in suspense for the blunder. So far, everything is all good. Magnus is playing good moves. We see, the rooks coming into the game. All of black's pieces getting in very good positions here. And in this position, actually, we see g6, the bishop coming to f4, and here is the big blunder, queen to f8. It's not immediate why this move here is a blunder, but let me go ahead and kind of break it down to you. Here, even though black doesn't have a queen, they still have a lot of pieces that are actually right next to the king, and so you'll notice that there's actually a lot of possibilities to attack the king here. And the problem is the king can really always escape to here, which is why once the queen moves to f8, the king moves to b7, and all of a sudden, white was the one that was attacking, but now black is the one that has all of the possibilities to deliver checkmate, and in general, the king here is obviously blocked. So the king actually helps black in an attempt to deliver checkmate, and there's no good move here. If the queen takes the bishop, let's start with this, then rook a2, you could either give away the queen immediately, but this would be checkmate, so the king to b4, and you're going to win the queen regardless. So this can't happen. If instead any check really happens here, something like this, then bishop to c7 is actually checkmate, and now the queen has to give away itself, and black's already obviously winning here. And similar thing happens with this move, bishop to c7, a very easy checkmate, or not checkmate, but forcing the queen to be given away. And yeah, there's absolutely no move. In fact, here, according to the engine, the best move is taking the bishop, and you can kind of play around with this. You'll notice there's no great way to stop checkmate and keep your bishop. In fact, and keep your queen, sorry. In fact, there is no way. So the beauty here is that the blunder doesn't seem so, it doesn't immediately seem like a blunder. A lot of times when you think of blunders, you think of giving away your queen for free or your bishop for free. But here, it's not so clear as to this being a blunder, which is, of course, it makes a lot of sense. If Magnus Carlsen blunders, it's probably not going to be the most obvious blunder. But yeah, it's an incredible position for black to be in. Just all of their pieces working harmoniously together to deliver a great attack here and possible checkmates. And again, there's nothing that white can do here. We can show how the game continues. We see queen to f7 in the game, and now bishop c7, the queen takes, the king takes, and now we see h5, the rook to g2, and in this position, Magnus Carlsen resigned because there's no hope in promoting any of these two pawns to a queen, and this is how the game ended. So maybe you were hoping for more of an obvious blunder, but you're not going to get that out of Magnus Carlsen. This, I think, is going to be the biggest blunder because of how hard it is to find and how incredible it is when you actually see it happening. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.